The Mind of a Winner. What Champions Do Differently. Written and published by Echotales. Introduction. Winning is not an accident. It is a pattern of thought. Every champion you admire shares something deeper than talent or luck. They think differently. They respond differently. They decide differently. This book is about that difference. The Mind of a Winner explores what happens before success becomes visible, before the trophy, before the applause, before the results. Most people study outcomes. Champions study causes. They train their minds long before they train their skills. They master focus before chasing motivation. They build discipline before seeking confidence. This audiobook is not about shortcuts. It is about structure. It is about habits, standards, and decisions that compound over time. You will learn how winners take responsibility under pressure, how they stay calm when others panic, how they use failure as feedback, not as a verdict. Each chapter is designed to be simple and practical. No complex theories, no unnecessary noise, just clear ideas you can apply immediately. This is not only for athletes, it is for leaders, creators, entrepreneurs, and anyone who wants to perform at a higher level. Winning begins internally, long before the world sees it. As you listen, do not rush. Let each idea land. Let each principle challenge you, because the goal of this book is not inspiration alone. The goal is transformation. You are about to step inside the mindset that shapes champions, and once your thinking changes, your results will follow. Chapter 1. Winning is a decision. Winning does not begin with action. It begins with a decision, before effort, before discipline, before confidence. There is a moment where a person decides who they are going to be. Most people think winning is the result of circumstances. They believe it depends on talent, timing, or opportunity. Champions know something different. They understand that winning starts internally. The decision to win is quiet. No one applauds it. No one sees it happen. But it changes everything that follows. Many people wait for motivation before they act. Champions act because they have decided. They move even when they feel uncertain. They move even when the outcome is unclear. This is the first difference. A decision is not a wish. It is not a hope. It is a commitment to a standard of behavior. When someone decides to win, they stop negotiating with themselves. They stop asking if they feel like showing up. They stop waiting for perfect conditions. They choose consistency over comfort. Consider two people starting the same journey. They have similar skills. They have similar resources. One waits to feel ready. The other decides to commit fully. Months later, the gap is obvious. Not because one is smarter, but because one chose earlier. Winning is rarely about intensity. It is about direction. A clear decision gives your effort a target. Without it, energy scatters, focus weakens, progress slows. This is why many people stay busy, but go nowhere. A decision creates alignment. Your thoughts move in one direction. Your actions follow. Your habits begin to support your goal. This is when momentum starts. Think about a moment in your life when you made a firm decision, not a soft one, a real one. You stopped debating. You stopped explaining. You simply moved forward. That is the power champions access early. They do not wait for confidence to appear. Confidence is built through follow-through. It is the reward, not the requirement. Every champion has faced doubt. The difference is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear decide. A decision removes options, and that is a good thing. When quitting is no longer on the table, effort increases, creativity improves, resilience strengthens. You stop asking, "Should I continue?" You start asking, "How do I improve?" This shift changes everything. There is also a cost to undecided living. It drains energy. It creates mental noise. It keeps you stuck in preparation mode. Champions avoid this trap. They decide early and adjust along the way. They understand that clarity beats perfection. A decision does not guarantee success, but indecision guarantees stagnation. This is where responsibility enters. When you decide to win, you accept full ownership. No excuses, no blame, no waiting for permission. You take control of effort, attitude, and response. This mindset creates strength under pressure. When challenges appear, and they will, the decision holds you steady. You remember why you started. You remember who you chose to become. This is not about being aggressive. It is about being deliberate. Winning is not about dominating others. It is about mastering yourself. Every day presents small decisions. Wake up or snooze. Focus or distract. Commit or delay. Champions treat small decisions seriously. They know these moments shape identity. You do not decide once and forget it. You reinforce the decision daily, through action. This is how belief is built. If you want to win, start here. Decide clearly. Decide calmly. Decide without drama. Decide who you are when things get difficult. Decide how you respond when progress is slow. Decide what standard you will not compromise. Winning does not arrive suddenly. It grows quietly from repeated choices. The moment you decide, the path becomes visible. The work becomes meaningful. The excuses lose power. Winning is not something you chase. It is something you choose. And once that decision is made, everything else becomes possible. Chapter 2. Responsibility creates power. Power does not come from control over others. It comes from control over yourself. This is where responsibility begins. Most people misunderstand responsibility. They see it as pressure, as blame, as something heavy. Champions see it differently. They see responsibility as freedom. The moment you take responsibility, you take power back. When something goes wrong, most people look outward. They blame circumstances. They blame people. They blame timing. This reaction feels natural, but it weakens the mind. Champions respond in another way. They ask a different question. What is my role in this? That question changes everything. Responsibility does not mean fault. It means ownership. Ownership of effort. Ownership of response. You may not control what happens, but you always control how you respond. This is where power lives. Imagine two people facing the same setback. One complains, the other reflects. One waits for conditions to improve. The other improves themselves. Time passes. Only one grows stronger. Responsibility creates clarity. When you accept ownership, excuses disappear. Energy returns. Focus sharpens. You stop wasting mental space on blame. You start investing energy into solutions. This is why responsibility feels empowering to champions. They do not see themselves as victims of circumstance. They see themselves as participants in outcomes. Even when events are unfair, even when conditions are difficult, especially then, because responsibility does not ask what is fair, it asks what is possible. This mindset builds resilience. When something fails, champions do not collapse emotionally. They analyze calmly. They extract lessons. Failure becomes feedback. This approach turns mistakes into tools. It transforms setbacks into training. Responsibility also builds self-respect. When you keep promises to yourself, confidence grows. When you own your results, identity strengthens. You begin to trust yourself. That trust is rare and powerful. Many people want confidence before responsibility. Champions know it works the other way around. Confidence follows ownership. Every time you take responsibility, you reinforce a powerful belief. I can handle this. That belief compounds over time. Responsibility also removes fear. Fear thrives on uncertainty and helplessness. Responsibility creates direction. You may not know the outcome, but you know your role. That is enough to move forward. Champions understand this under pressure. When the stakes are high, they do not panic. They narrow their focus. What is within my control right now? This question grounds them. It pulls attention away from noise. It brings the mind back to action. This is why responsibility is a competitive advantage. While others react emotionally, champions respond intentionally. Responsibility also shapes leadership. People trust those who own results, who admit mistakes, who do not hide. This applies to teams and to personal life. When you stop blaming, communication improves. Relationships strengthen. Respect grows. Responsibility creates credibility. There is another layer to this principle. Self-responsibility is private. No one sees it. No one rewards it immediately. But it changes how you behave when no one is watching. Champions hold themselves accountable, even in silence. Especially in silence. They do not need external pressure to do the work. Their standards guide them. This is the mark of internal power. You can see it in daily habits, in preparation, in recovery, in consistency. Responsibility shows up in the small moments. Getting back on track after a bad day, admitting when effort slipped, correcting course without excuses. These moments build strength quietly. If you want more power in your life, start here. Take responsibility for your choices, for your preparation, for your reactions. Not tomorrow. Now do not wait for conditions to improve. Improve your response to conditions. Responsibility is not a burden. It is a key. It unlocks growth. It unlocks confidence. It unlocks momentum. Champions know this truth deeply. The more responsibility they take, the more powerful they become. And once you experience that power, you never want to give it away again. Chapter 3. Identity shapes performance. Performance is never random. It follows identity. People do not rise to the level of their goals. They act in alignment with who they believe they are. This is one of the most important principles in this book. Many people focus on results. Champions focus on identity. They understand that behavior flows from self-image. If you see yourself as disciplined, you act with discipline. If you see yourself as inconsistent, inconsistency feels normal. Identity is the silent driver behind every action. Most people are unaware of this force. They try to change habits without changing self-belief. This creates frustration. Champions take a different approach. They reshape identity first. Then behavior follows naturally. Think about how people speak. Listen closely. I am not a morning person. I am bad under pressure. I am not confident. These are not facts. They are identities being rehearsed. Every time a label is repeated, it strengthens. The mind seeks proof to support it. Champions are careful with identity language. They do not define themselves by past mistakes. They define themselves by standards. They say, I am someone who shows up. I'm someone who finishes. I am someone who stays calm under pressure. At first, these statements feel unfamiliar. That is normal. Identity change always feels uncomfortable before it feels natural. This is where many people stop. Champions continue. They understand that identity is built through evidence, not emotion. Every small action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. One workout completed, one focused hour, one difficult conversation handled well. These moments matter. They may feel insignificant, but they are shaping self-image. Champions respect small wins. They know consistency rewires belief. There is a powerful shift that happens when identity changes. Decision-making becomes easier. You no longer ask, should I do this? You ask, is this who I am? That question filters choices instantly. This is why champions appear disciplined without struggle. They are not forcing behavior. They are expressing identity. Consider an athlete who sees themselves as prepared. They do not skip practice, not because of fear, but because skipping feels out of alignment. Identity creates internal pressure, a healthy one. This pressure does not come from guilt. It comes from self-respect. Champions protect their identity fiercely. They are selective with their environment. They avoid inputs that weaken belief. They choose people who reinforce standards. They understand that identity is influenced by surroundings. This is why environment will be addressed later in this book. But identity always comes first. Another key truth: identity is not fixed. Many people believe personality is permanent. Champions know it is shaped. The brain adapts through repetition. Beliefs adjust through experience. You are not stuck with who you have been. You are building who you will be. This realization is freeing. It removes labels. It restores choice. Identity also determines how you handle failure. If failure attacks identity, people quit. If failure informs identity, champions grow. They do not say, "I failed." They say, "I am someone who learns." This shift protects confidence. It keeps momentum alive during difficult phases. Champions expect discomfort during growth. They see it as confirmation, not danger. They understand that a new identity requires new behavior, and new behavior feels awkward at first. That awkwardness is not a warning, it is progress. If you want to elevate performance, start by auditing identity. Listen to your internal language. Notice how you describe yourself. Then choose intentionally. Decide who you are becoming, not emotionally, but through action. Show up as that person, even when it feels unnatural. Especially then, identity shapes performance every day. Whether you guide it or not, champions guide it. They build an identity that supports excellence. And once identity is aligned, performance follows naturally. Chapter 4. Discipline beats motivation. Motivation feels powerful, but it is unreliable. Discipline is different. It does not depend on mood. It does not wait for inspiration. This is one of the clearest distinctions between champions and everyone else. Most people wait to feel motivated before they act. They look for energy. They look for excitement. They look for the right moment. Champions do not wait. They act first, and motivation follows. Motivation is emotional. It rises and falls. It changes with sleep, stress, and circumstances. Discipline is structural. It is built. It is trained. It becomes automatic. This is why discipline wins over time. Think about how motivation works. Some days you feel strong, some days you do not. If action depends on feeling good, progress becomes inconsistent. Inconsistency breaks momentum, and broken momentum kills confidence. Champions understand this early. They remove emotion from execution. They do not ask, "Do I feel like doing this?" They ask, "What is required?" That question keeps them moving forward. Discipline is not harsh. It is clear. It creates rules in advance. Rules eliminate daily decision fatigue. When something is non-negotiable, there is no debate. This protects mental energy. Champions are not disciplined because they are special. They are disciplined because they reduce choice. They design routines that support performance. They show up at the same time. They repeat the same standards. This repetition builds reliability. Discipline also creates trust with yourself. Every time you follow through, self-respect grows. Every time you break promises to yourself, confidence weakens. Champions guard this trust carefully. They understand that internal trust matters more than external praise. Motivation often comes from outside: music, speeches, encouragement. Discipline comes from within. It operates quietly, without drama, without hype. This is why discipline is not always visible, but its results are. Another truth: discipline is easier than constant motivation. Motivation requires emotional effort. Discipline runs on systems. Once a habit is formed, effort decreases. Champions invest energy upfront to make behavior automatic later. They do the hard work once, so life becomes easier repeatedly. Many people do the opposite. They avoid structure. They rely on feeling ready. This makes everything harder. Discipline also stabilizes performance under pressure. When stress rises, emotion becomes unreliable. Habits remain. Champions fall back on discipline when pressure hits. They trust their preparation. They trust their routines. This is why they stay calm when others panic. They are not guessing what to do. They already know. Discipline is also a form of self-respect. It says, "My future matters more than my comfort." This mindset shifts priorities. You stop negotiating with short-term feelings. You start honoring long-term goals. This does not mean ignoring rest. It means choosing intentionally. Champions rest with purpose. They work with purpose. Nothing is random. There is a common myth that discipline kills creativity. The opposite is true. Discipline creates freedom. When basics are handled automatically, the mind becomes available. Focus improves. Creativity expands. This is why disciplined people often perform with ease. They are not chaotic. They are grounded. If you want more discipline, start small. Do not aim for intensity. Aim for consistency. Choose actions you can repeat daily. Build identity through follow-through. Discipline grows through success, not force. One kept promise leads to another. Momentum builds quietly. Motivation will still appear, but it will no longer control you. You will act whether it shows up or not. That is power. Champions are not driven by emotion. They are guided by standards. They do what needs to be done. On good days, on difficult days, on ordinary days. This is how winning becomes predictable. Motivation is a visitor. Discipline is a foundation. And foundations are what champions build their lives on. Chapter 5. Focus is a competitive advantage. Focus is not a talent. It is a skill. And in a distracted world it becomes a powerful advantage. Most people think they lack time. What they really lack is attention. Champions understand this clearly. They know that where attention goes, performance follows. Focus directs energy. Without it, effort spreads thin. With it, progress accelerates. This is why two people can work the same hours and get very different results. Focus is the difference. Distraction is not always loud. Often it is subtle. Notifications, past and finished thoughts, mental noise. These interruptions fragment effort. Champions protect their attention deliberately. They decide what deserves focus, and just as important, what does not. They understand that focus is a choice made repeatedly, one task at a time, one priority at a time. This sounds simple, but it is rare. Most people multitask. They switch constantly. They believe they are being productive. In reality, they are draining mental energy. Champions avoid this trap. They work in blocks. They finish what they start. They create space for deep effort. This creates quality. Focus also strengthens confidence. When attention is scattered, mistakes increase. Doubt grows. Frustration builds. When focus is sharp, execution improves. Results follow. Confidence stabilizes. This feedback loop is powerful. Champions train focus intentionally. They remove distractions before they begin. They design environments that support concentration. They limit inputs that fragment the mind. This is not about willpower. It is about preparation. Focus is easier when distractions are eliminated in advance. Champions do not rely on self-control alone. They rely on structure. Another key insight: focus is not just external. It is internal. Mental focus means staying present, not replaying the past, not worrying about the future. This is especially important under pressure. When pressure rises, the mind wants to escape. It jumps ahead to outcomes. It imagines failure. Champions bring attention back to the moment. What is the next action? This question grounds them. They focus on execution, not consequences. This keeps nerves steady. Focus also sharpens learning. When attention is present, feedback is processed faster. Mistakes are corrected sooner. Improvement accelerates. Distraction slows growth. This is why focus compounds over time. Small improvements add up quickly when attention is consistent. Champions also understand that focus requires recovery. You cannot concentrate endlessly. Mental fatigue reduces quality. They schedule breaks intentionally. They step away to reset. They return sharper. This balance sustains high performance. Focus is not about intensity all day. It is about intentional effort at the right time. Many people try to push constantly. They burn out. Champions pace themselves. They know when to apply pressure. They know when to release it. This awareness protects longevity. Focus also influences decision-making. When attention is scattered, decisions are reactive. When attention is clear, decisions are deliberate. Champions slow down to think clearly. They do not rush important choices. They reduce noise before deciding. This leads to better outcomes. If you want focus to become an advantage, start by simplifying. Reduce commitments. Clarify priorities. Eliminate unnecessary inputs. Do less, but do it well. Train your attention like a muscle. Start with short periods of deep focus. Increase gradually. Consistency matters more than duration. Focus will not always feel exciting, but it will always be effective. In a world that rewards speed and noise, focus creates separation. Champions do not try to do everything. They do the right things, fully. And that is why focus becomes one of their greatest advantages. Chapter 6. Pressure reveals the mindset. Pressure does not change who you are. It reveals who you are. When stakes rise, habits surface, beliefs become visible, mindset shows itself. This is why pressure is such a powerful teacher. Most people fear pressure. They see it as a threat, as something to avoid. Champions see pressure differently. They see it as information. Pressure exposes preparation. It reveals discipline. It highlights mental training. When pressure arrives, there is no time to pretend. Some people tighten. They rush. They second-guess. Others slow down. They focus. They execute. The difference is not talent. It is mindset. Pressure amplifies internal dialogue. If your inner voice is critical, pressure becomes overwhelming. If your inner voice is calm, pressure becomes manageable. Champions train their internal response long before high-stakes moments. They do not wait for pressure to practice calm. They build it daily. This is why routines matter. Under pressure, the brain looks for familiarity. It falls back on what it knows. Champions rely on habits, not hope. They trust preparation. They trust process. This trust stabilizes emotions. Pressure also exposes where identity is fragile. If self-worth depends on outcome, pressure feels dangerous. Every mistake feels personal. Champions separate identity from results. They care deeply, but they do not attach their value to a single outcome. This creates emotional balance. They stay engaged without panic. Pressure also sharpens focus for champions. When distractions fall away, attention narrows. Only what matters remains. They do not think about applause. They think about execution. This ability to simplify under stress is trained. It comes from clarity. Champions know what matters most. So when pressure rises, choices become obvious. Another truth: pressure cannot be eliminated. It can only be managed. Avoiding pressure limits growth. Seeking comfort weakens resilience. Champions expose themselves to pressure intentionally. They simulate it in training. They practice difficult scenarios. They rehearse mentally. This makes pressure familiar. When the real moment arrives, it feels known. This familiarity builds confidence. Pressure also reveals emotional control. Some people react immediately. They speak quickly. They act impulsively. Champions pause. They create a small gap between stimulus and response. That pause is powerful. It allows choice. It prevents regret. This skill is trained through awareness, noticing emotions without being ruled by them. Pressure is also where leadership appears. In tense moments, people look for stability. They follow those who remain composed. Champions provide that calm, not by force, but by presence. They do not escalate emotion, they regulate it. This influences everyone around them. Pressure reveals mindset not only in big moments, but in small ones. A difficult conversation, a missed deadline, an unexpected obstacle. Champions respond consistently. They do not change character under stress. They reveal it. If you want to improve how you perform under pressure, start now. Train calm in ordinary moments. Practice focus when it is easy. Build habits when stakes are low. Then when pressure arrives, you will not rise suddenly. You will perform exactly as you have trained. Pressure is not the enemy. It is the mirror, and champions use it to see clearly, adjust intentionally, and perform at their best. Chapter 7. Failure is data, not defeat. Failure is one of the most misunderstood experiences in life. Many people see it as an ending. Champions see it as information. This difference changes everything. Failure itself is neutral. It carries no meaning until the mind assigns one. Some people interpret failure as proof they are not capable. Others interpret it as feedback on what needs adjustment. Champions choose the second interpretation. They understand that failure is not a verdict. It is a report. It shows what worked. It shows what did not. It highlights gaps in preparation, skill, or strategy. Nothing more. When failure is treated as identity, people quit. When it is treated as data, people improve. This is a critical distinction. Many people fear failure because they fear what it says about them. They tie self-worth to outcomes. Champions separate the two. They care deeply about results, but they do not let results define them. This emotional separation creates resilience. It allows learning without shame. Think about how children learn to walk. They fall repeatedly. They do not interpret falling as failure. They interpret it as part of the process. That mindset does not disappear. It gets replaced. Over time, people are taught to avoid mistakes, to hide errors, to protect image. Champions reverse this conditioning. They return to a learning mindset. They ask better questions after failure. What specifically went wrong? What was missing? What can be improved next time? These questions turn pain into progress. Failure also tests commitment. When things go well, motivation is easy. When things break down, commitment is revealed. Many people retreat at the first setback, not because they cannot continue, but because they never decided how they would respond. Champions decide in advance. They expect failure along the path. They plan for it mentally. This preparation reduces emotional shock. When failure arrives, it feels familiar, not personal. Champions also understand that failure carries timing information. Sometimes effort was right, but timing was wrong. Sometimes the strategy was solid, but execution was inconsistent. Failure highlights these details. Ignoring failure wastes valuable data. Studying it accelerates growth. Another important truth: failure often arrives before breakthroughs. Progress is rarely linear. It moves in cycles: effort, setback, adjustment, improvement. Champions trust this process. They do not panic during setbacks. They stay engaged. This patience separates long-term winners from short-term quitters. Failure also builds emotional strength. Each time you face it without collapsing, resilience grows. Confidence becomes grounded, not inflated. You begin to trust yourself under uncertainty. This trust is powerful. It allows risk-taking without fear of collapse. Champions are not fearless. They are failure-capable. They know they can recover, so they move forward. Failure also clarifies priorities. When something does not work, noise falls away. Only what matters remains. Champions use failure to simplify. They cut what is unnecessary. They refine what is essential. This sharpens direction. It is also important to understand this. Failure hurts. Champions do not deny emotion. They feel disappointment. They feel frustration. But they do not live there. They acknowledge emotion. Then they analyze. Emotion passes. Data remains. This balance keeps them moving. Another key insight: repeated failure without reflection is not growth. It is repetition. Champions reflect intentionally. They write lessons down. They adjust systems. They change behavior. This turns experience into wisdom. Failure also builds humility. It reminds champions they are always students, always refining, always learning. This humility keeps ego in check. It prevents stagnation. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history followed failure, not because failure was magical, but because it forced clarity. Champions welcome that clarity. They do not chase failure, but they do not avoid it either. They understand it is part of the path. If you want to grow faster, change your relationship with failure. Stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" Start asking, "What is this teaching me?" This shift restores control. Failure no longer feels like a wall. It becomes a doorway. Every setback carries a lesson. Every mistake holds insight. Champions collect these lessons. They build strength quietly. They improve steadily. Failure does not stop them. It shapes them. It sharpens judgment. It strengthens resolve. It deepens understanding. In the end, failure is not the opposite of winning. Avoiding learning is. Champions know this. They fail forward. They adjust quickly. They continue calmly. Failure is not defeat. It is data. And those who learn to read it well eventually write their own success stories. Chapter 8. Standards decide the outcome. Outcomes do not rise by accident. They rise to the level of standards. This is a quiet truth that shapes every life. Most people set goals. Champions set standards. Goals point to a destination. Standards define daily behavior. This is why standards matter more. A goal is something you aim for. A standard is something you live by. When standards are low, results suffer. When standards rise, behavior changes automatically. Champions understand this connection. They do not rely on external rules to perform. They rely on internal standards. These standards guide choices when no one is watching. Standards answer one simple question: what is acceptable to me? That answer determines consistency. Many people lower standards to avoid discomfort. They excuse poor effort. They normalize inconsistency. Over time, this becomes identity. Champions do the opposite. They raise standards to protect excellence. This does not mean perfection. It means clarity. Champions know what they will tolerate and what they will not. They do not accept sloppy preparation. They do not accept repeated excuses. They do not accept disrespect toward their own potential. These decisions shape outcomes long before results appear. Standards also remove emotional decision-making. When standards are clear, choice becomes simple. You do not ask how you feel. You act according to your standard. This reduces mental friction. Champions conserve energy by eliminating negotiation. Standards also create reliability. People trust those who operate at a consistent level. Teams function better. Performance stabilizes. Consistency is a direct result of clear standards. Standards also influence self-respect. When you meet your own expectations, confidence grows. When you repeatedly fall below them, trust erodes. Champions protect this internal trust carefully. They would rather do fewer things well than many things poorly. This discipline compounds. Another important truth: standards shape environment. People with high standards attract similar individuals. They repel chaos. They repel excuses. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. Champions are not rigid. They are intentional. They adjust strategy when needed. But standards remain firm. Effort does not drop when motivation fades. Focus does not disappear under pressure. Standards hold behavior steady. Standards also determine recovery from setbacks. When standards are low, failure leads to collapse. When standards are high, failure leads to correction. Champions do not panic after mistakes. They recalibrate. They ask, what does my standard require now? This question brings direction. It shifts attention from emotion to action. Standards also reveal priorities. What you protect consistently shows what matters most. If rest is a standard, burnout decreases. If preparation is a standard, pressure weakens. If honesty is a standard, trust grows. Standards create structure across life. Many people confuse standards with harshness. They think high standards mean constant pressure. Champions know better. High standards create peace. When behavior aligns with values, inner conflict fades. You stop arguing with yourself. This mental clarity improves performance. Standards also allow freedom. When you know who you are and what you accept, distractions lose power. You say no easily. You protect focus. This is why champions appear disciplined without strain. Their standards are doing the work. If you want better outcomes, do not chase them directly. Audit your standards. Look at daily habits. Look at how you prepare. Look at how you recover. Then adjust deliberately. Raise standards slightly, not dramatically. Small upgrades sustained over time change everything. Champions are patient with progress, but they are strict with standards. They understand that outcomes are delayed, reflections of behavior. You cannot outperform your standards. Once standards are elevated, results follow naturally. This is not about pressure. It is about respect. Respect for your time. Respect for your effort. Respect for your potential. Standards decide the outcome, always, and champions choose them carefully. Chapter 9. Environment shapes the mind. The mind does not operate in isolation. It responds to what surrounds it. Environment is shaping you every day, whether you notice it or not. Most people focus on willpower. Champions focus on environment. They understand a simple truth. The environment you live in influences how you think, act, and decide. This includes physical space, people, information, daily routines. All of it matters. Willpower is limited. Environment is constant. Champions do not rely on constant self-control. They design surroundings that support good decisions. This makes discipline easier. Think about how behavior changes in different places. In a quiet room, focus improves. In a noisy space, attention scatters. This is not a personal flaw. It is human nature. Champions work with this reality, not against it. They remove unnecessary friction. They reduce temptation. They simplify choices. This conserves mental energy. Environment also includes people. The people you spend time with influence your standards. Their language becomes familiar. Their habits become normal. Champions choose their circles carefully. They seek people who challenge them. People who value growth. People who operate with integrity. This is not about superiority. It is about alignment. When environment supports growth, progress accelerates. Champions also manage informational input. What you listen to, what you read, what you watch. These inputs shape internal dialogue. Negative inputs weaken focus. Constructive inputs strengthen clarity. Champions limit exposure to noise. They are selective. They protect mental space. This creates calm. Environment also shapes emotion. Clutter creates stress. Order creates clarity. Champions keep their spaces intentional, not perfect, but functional. They design spaces that support purpose. This applies to workspaces, training environments, even digital spaces. Notifications matter. Visual clutter matters. Champions reduce distractions where possible. They understand that every interruption costs attention. Another key point: environment influences identity. If your surroundings reinforce old habits, change becomes harder. If your surroundings support new behavior, change becomes natural. This is why environment is critical during transitions. Champions adjust environment when they raise standards. They do not expect themselves to fight old patterns in the same setting. They make change easier. Environment also affects recovery. Rest is not just time off. It is quality of surroundings. Quiet spaces restore focus. Nature calms the nervous system. Champions value recovery as much as effort. This balance sustains performance. Many people underestimate environment because it feels passive. Champions know it is powerful. Small changes compound: a cleaner desk, a planned schedule, a supportive routine. These adjustments reduce friction daily. Environment also reveals priorities. What you protect in your space shows what matters. If focus matters, distractions are removed. If growth matters, learning tools are visible. Champions make priorities visible. This reduces reliance on memory and motivation. If you want to upgrade performance, audit your environment. Ask simple questions. What supports focus here? What creates distraction? What reinforces old habits? Then adjust intentionally. You do not need to change everything at once. Small improvements create momentum. Champions are designers of their environment, not victims of it. They shape surroundings to support discipline. They shape inputs to support clarity. They shape relationships to support growth. Over time, the environment shapes the mind, and the mind shapes results. This is why environment is not a detail. It is a foundation. Change the environment, and the mind follows. Chapter 10. Becoming the person who wins. Winning is not a moment. It is a process of becoming. By now, one truth should be clear. Success is not built from isolated actions. It is built from identity, standards, and daily choices. Champions do not chase winning. They become the kind of person who wins naturally. This shift changes everything. Most people focus on outcomes. They ask, how do I win? Champions ask, who do I need to become? That question guides behavior. Becoming requires patience. Change does not happen in a single breakthrough. It happens through repeated alignment. Small decisions, consistent habits, clear standards. These elements shape character over time. Champions understand that character precedes performance. They do not wait for confidence to arrive. They build it through action. Every time they show up when it is uncomfortable, identity strengthens. This is how belief becomes real. Becoming also requires letting go. Old habits, old excuses, old identities. You cannot carry everything forward. Champions release what no longer serves growth. They do not cling to past versions of themselves. They evolve. Becoming the person who wins also means embracing responsibility fully. No blaming, no hiding, no avoidance. Ownership becomes a way of life. This creates stability. When responsibility is internal, external chaos loses power. Champions stay centered. Becoming also means mastering emotional regulation. Winners feel emotion. They do not suppress it, but they do not act from it blindly. They pause. They choose responses. This emotional maturity separates them from impulsive behavior. Another key trait is patience. Champions play the long game. They do not demand immediate rewards. They trust delayed results. This patience protects discipline. It allows progress to compound quietly. Becoming the person who wins also involves self-honesty. Champions are not harsh, but they are truthful. They see gaps without denial. They correct without drama. This honesty accelerates improvement. They do not waste time pretending. They focus on progress. Becoming also requires commitment to learning. Champions remain students. They seek feedback. They study patterns. They refine systems. Growth never stops. Winning does not create complacency. It creates curiosity. Another important element is consistency, not intensity, not perfection. Consistency. Champions show up even when effort feels ordinary. They understand that ordinary days build extraordinary results. Becoming is built in these moments. This process also changes how failure is experienced. Failure no longer threatens identity. It informs it. Mistakes become part of development, not reasons to quit. This resilience allows sustained growth. Becoming the person who wins also reshapes relationships. Champions surround themselves with accountability, not comfort alone. They value honesty over approval. This supports long-term excellence. At this stage, winning becomes a byproduct. It appears naturally because behavior is aligned. You are no longer forcing discipline. You are expressing identity. You are no longer chasing focus. You are protecting it. You are no longer reacting to pressure. You are grounded within it. This is what becoming looks like. It is quiet. It is steady. It is intentional. There is no finish line here, only refinement. Each day offers a chance to reinforce who you are becoming. Small choices matter. Show up with standards. Respond with ownership. Act with clarity. Do this long enough, and winning becomes predictable. Not because life is easy, but because you are prepared. In the end, winning is not something you achieve once. It is something you live. And when you become the person who wins, results follow naturally. Conclusion: train the mind, win the game. Winning is never accidental. It is the result of mental training done daily. Throughout this book, one message remains clear: the mind leads, everything else follows. Champions do not rely on talent alone. They build discipline, they take responsibility, they protect focus, they raise standards, they design their environment. Most of all, they train how they think. They understand that the greatest competition is internal. Doubt, distraction, fear, comfort. These are the real opponents. When the mind is untrained, effort becomes inconsistent. When the mind is trained, performance stabilizes. This is why mindset matters more than circumstances. Training the mind does not require perfection. It requires awareness and repetition. Small choices practiced consistently reshape belief. Belief reshapes behavior. Behavior reshapes results. This process is quiet, but it is powerful. Winning does not arrive suddenly. It reveals itself over time. It appears in how you respond to pressure, in how you recover from setbacks, in how you show up on ordinary days. These moments define outcomes. This book was not written to motivate you briefly. It was written to guide lasting change. Use these principles deliberately. Apply them patiently. Return to them when progress feels slow. Mental training is never wasted. Every focused hour compounds. Every disciplined action strengthens identity. Every responsible choice builds power. The world will continue to change. Challenges will remain unpredictable. But a trained mind creates stability. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you moving forward. It keeps you in control of response. Winning is not about dominating others. It is about mastering yourself. Train the mind. Align behavior. Commit to standards. Do this consistently, and winning becomes a natural outcome. The game is never just external. It is always internal first. Train the mind. and you will win far more than games.